Thank you for tuning into our channel. We're thrilled to have you here and hope you enjoy today's story. It's going to be quite a journey, so grab a seat and let's dive in. I zipped up my suitcase, double-checking to make sure I had everything for my business trip: phone, wallet, passport good to go. A glance at the clock showed I had plenty of time to make it to the airport. "Stella," I called out. "I'm heading out now." My wife appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. "Have a safe trip, Santiago. Don't forget to call me when you land," I nodded, giving her a quick kiss on the cheek. "Will do. Take care, babe." As I loaded my luggage into the car, a nagging feeling hit me. I felt like I was forgetting something. Shaking it off, I pulled out of the driveway and headed toward the airport. The traffic was lighter than usual, and I made it in good time. Just as I parked in the short-term lot, it hit me I forgot my phone charger. Damn it, I'd be gone for a week, and there was no way I could make it without it. I debated for a moment. My flight wasn't for another 2 hours. If I hurried, I could get back home and still catch my plane. With my mind made up, I reversed out of the parking spot and sped back toward the house. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway, the house peaceful and quiet. I chuckled to myself, imagining Stella's surprise when she saw me come back. I unlocked the front door quietly, not wanting to alarm her. As I stepped inside, I heard something from upstairs: muffled voices and a laugh. My brow furrowed. Was Stella watching TV? I started up the stairs, the voices growing clearer as I approached our bedroom. Something felt off. "Oh, Corey," I heard Stella's voice purr. "You're insatiable." A deep male chuckle followed. "Can you blame me?" "Look at you." My blood froze. Corey, my gym trainer, was in my bedroom with my wife? I pushed the door open, the sight before me burning into my brain. Both of them were frozen, staring at me with wide eyes. "Santiago!" Stella gasped, scrambling off Corey. I held up a hand, silencing her. "Save it." Corey sat up, grabbing for his shirt. "Listen, man," I can explain. My fist connected with his jaw before he could finish, sending him sprawling onto the bed. The satisfying crunch of bone did little to quench the anger boiling inside me. "Santiago, stop!" Stella shrieked. "It's not what you think." I turned to her, my voice dangerously low. "Not what I think. Enlighten me, then. What exactly is this?" she stammered, her confidence crumbling. It just happened." I laughed bitterly. "Like you just happened to be doing this? Like he just happened to be here?" Corey groaned, rubbing his jaw. "Look, we didn't mean for this to." "Shut up," I snarled, turning back to him. "You're lucky that's all you're getting." I pulled out my phone, recording a quick video of the guilt etched on both their faces. "What are you doing?" Stella demanded. "Insurance," I replied coldly. "Now, both of you stay put. We're not finished here." I backed out of the room, slamming the door and wedging a chair under the handle. Their muffled protests followed me as I stormed downstairs, my hands trembling as I grabbed my phone again. "First call Stella's parents," Mr. Fisher answered. "Is everything okay?" "No, sir," I replied. "It's not. I need you and Mrs. Fisher to come over right away. There's a situation with Stella." His concern was clear. "What kind of situation?" "It's best if you see for yourselves. Please come quickly." Next call, Jean Robinson, Corey's wife. "Jean, it's Santiago Fisher. I need you to come to my house immediately." "It's about Corey. Is he okay?" she asked, worry evident. "Physically, yes, but you need to be here now." I ended the call, pacing the living room as I waited. The muffled arguments upstairs drifted down. Let them fight, let them make excuses. Nothing could justify this betrayal. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Stella's parents and Jean, all looking confused and concerned. "Santiago, what's going on?" Stella's mother asked as they entered. I took a deep breath. "Follow me." I led them upstairs, their questions fading as they heard the voices from the bedroom. Removing the chair, I threw open the door. "Oh my God!" John gasped. The scene spoke for itself. Stella's father shoved past me, his face red with fury. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. Stella burst into tears. "Daddy, I can explain what I cut in. How I caught you red-handed. How you destroyed our marriage." Corey stepped forward, hands raised. "Listen, everyone, this is a misunderstanding." Jean's icy voice sliced through the room. "A misunderstanding, Corey? What exactly am I misunderstanding?" The next hour blurred with shouting, tears, and accusations. Faced with undeniable evidence and witnesses, Stella and Corey finally admitted their affair. The disgust on her parents' faces was almost satisfying. "How could you do this?" Stella's mother cried. "To Santiago, to your family." Her father shook his head, his voice trembling with rage. "You're no daughter of ours, not after this." Jean stood silent for a moment, then turned to Corey. "I want a divorce." His face paled. "Jean, please, we can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," she replied coldly. "We're done." I turned to Stella and Corey, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Get out. Both of you." Now Stella's eyes widened. "Santiago, where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore," I said flatly. "You made your choice. Now live with it." As they gathered their things, the weight of what had happened started to sink in my marriage, and trust shattered in an instant. But as I watched them leave, I felt something else stir within me, a resolve. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Stella paused at the door, looking back at me, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Santiago. I never meant to hurt you." I met her gaze, my voice cold. "Save your apologies. You'll need them more than I will." As the door shut behind them, I turned to the others. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry you had to see this." Stella's parents hugged me, offering their full support. John gave me a nod, a silent understanding passing between us. As they left, I found myself alone in the suddenly empty house. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. The business trip was long forgotten. All I could think about was how I would make Stella and Corey pay for this betrayal. They believed they could humiliate me, but they had no clue what was coming. I grabbed my phone, cancelling both my flight and hotel bookings. Then I made a new call. "Patrick, it's Santiago. I need your help with something big." As I hung up, a grim smile spread across my face. Stella and Corey's little affair was about to go very, very public, and I was going to enjoy watching them fall. The next few days blurred by in a mix of anger and planning. I threw myself into work, leveraging my contacts in the boxing world to set my revenge in motion, but Stella and Corey weren't ready to go quietly. It started with a call from my business partner, Alex. "Santiago, we've got a problem," he said, his voice tense. "Have you seen the news?" I opened a news website on my computer, and there it was, private photos of Stella and me from our last vacation, intimate moments that I thought were ours alone, now exposed for everyone to see. "What the hell?" I muttered as I scrolled through the article. Alex continued. "It's not just the photos, Santiago, there's more." As I read on, my anger boiled. In addition to the photos, confidential information about our upcoming business deals had been leaked, details only Stella and I knew. Those backstabbing traitors. I growled. "What do you want to do?" Alex asked. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Damage control. Call our lawyers and get them to take down those photos. I'll handle the business fallout." As soon as I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying the spotlight, Santiago?" "This is just the beginning." I clenched my fist, resisting the urge to throw my phone. They wanted to play dirty? Fine, I could play dirtier. The next few hours were spent on frantic calls, trying to salvage our business deals. While most of our partners were sympathetic, the damage was already done. Our stock took a hit, and rumors of instability started to spread. That evening I stood staring out the window, my mind racing. The leaked photos and business secrets were a low blow, but I refused to let it break me. If anything, it only fueled my desire for revenge. My phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Patrick, my trainer and now partner in my plan. "Everything's set," he said without preamble. "The big event is in 2 weeks. You sure you want to go through with this?" "Absolutely," I replied. "Send out the invites, make sure Stella and Corey get theirs." Personally, Patrick hesitated. "Santiago, I know you're angry, but is this really the best way to handle it?" I clenched my jaw. They humiliated me, betrayed me, and now they're trying to ruin my business. Trust me, this is only the beginning of what they deserve. "All right, man. It's your call. I've got your back." As I hung up, a knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Jean standing there, looking worn but resolute. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside, letting her in. We hadn't spoken much since that day, both of us dealing with our own pain and anger. Jean sat on the couch, her eyes meeting mine. "I heard about the photos and the leaks." "I'm so sorry, Santiago," I shrugged, trying to seem indifferent. "It's just another low blow from them, nothing I can't handle." She leaned forward, her voice intense. "What are you planning, Santiago?" I know that look. For a moment, I considered brushing off her concern, but when I looked into her eyes, I saw the same hurt and betrayal that I felt. "I'm going to destroy them," I said simply, "publicly, completely. They want to air our dirty laundry. I'll give them a show they'll never forget." Jean was silent for a moment before she slowly nodded. Good. I want in her response caught me off guard. Are you sure? This isn't going to be pretty, she let out a bitter laugh. Pretty went out the window when I found my husband in bed with your wife. I want them to pay, Santiago, for both of us. I studied her for a moment, recognizing the resolve beneath her pain, and then nodded, a grim smile forming on my face. All right then, let's talk strategy. For the next hour, Jean and I fine-tuned my plan, incorporating her own ideas to maximize the impact. As she left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Stella and Corey thought they had won with their little media stunt, but they had no idea what was coming. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. I poured myself into training, pushing my body to its limits. If everything went according to plan, I'd need to be in top shape. The night before the event, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie. The man staring back at me was harder, colder than the one who left for a business trip just a few weeks ago. That man had died the moment he walked in on his wife's betrayal. My phone buzzed with a message from Patrick. Everything's ready. You sure about this? I replied with a simple, see you tomorrow as I climbed into bed. A small smile crept onto my face. Tomorrow, Stella and Corey would truly understand what humiliation meant, and I would be there to watch it unfold. The arena buzzed with excitement as I entered through the VIP entrance. Tonight's boxing match was the biggest event of the year, but for me it was just the opening act. Patrick greeted me at the door, concern etched on his face. Last chance to back out, Santiago. I patted his shoulder. Not a chance. Is everything ready? He nodded. The video's set. Stella and Corey are here. Third row. My jaw tightened at the mention of their names. Perfect. Let's give them a night to remember. As we walked to my reserved seat, I scanned the crowd. There they were, Stella and Corey, looking smug and comfortable. Stella wore a dress that showed off her curves, and Corey had his arm draped possessively around her. The sight made my blood boil. I took my seat, forcing myself to focus on the fight. The crowd roared as the fighters entered the ring, but I barely heard it. My mind was on what was about to happen. The match was brutal and fast, but I couldn't care less. I was just waiting for it to end. Finally, the referee raised the winner's hand, and as the crowd cheered, I stood and made my way to the ring. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the ring former boxing champion and tonight's event organizer, Santiago Fisher. A spotlight hit me as I stepped into the ring. The cheers grew louder. I was still a local hero, despite Stella and Corey's attempts to tarnish my reputation. I gripped the microphone, my heart racing. This was the moment. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. We've witnessed an amazing display of skill and sportsmanship in the ring, but now I'd like to touch on something more personal. The crowd quieted, sensing the change in tone. I noticed Stella and Corey shifting uneasily in their seats. Some of you may have seen compromising photos of me in the media recently, along with sensitive business information. A murmur spread through the audience. I continued. What you don't know is the story behind those leaks, a story of betrayal, of infidelity, of two people who thought they could ruin me without facing the consequences. I locked eyes with Stella and saw the color drain from her face. My wife, Stella, and my former trainer, Corey Robinson, believed they could wreck my reputation. They leaked those photos and business secrets, but they overlooked one important detail. I paused, allowing the tension to build. I'm Santiago Fisher, and I don't back down from a fight. With that, I nodded to Patrick. The big screen above the ring flickered on, and the video played, capturing the moment I walked in on Stella and Corey. The audience gasped as they saw Corey writhing in pain from my punch, while Stella's arrogance was crystal clear. I watched as the truth unfolded before everyone, Stella burying her face in her hands while Corey looked as if he wanted to vanish. As the video ended, I spoke again. Stella, Corey, I hope you're enjoying the show. You wanted to air our dirty laundry. Well, here it is. The crowd reacted with a mix of shocked silence and angry muttering. People began turning to stare at Stella and Corey, recognition settling in. But I'm not done yet, I continued. Corey Robinson, I've got a challenge for you. Corey's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fury. I smirked, knowing I had him where I wanted him. I challenge you to a boxing match, Corey, winner takes all, with a multi-million-dollar contract. The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and jeers. I could see Corey squirming, searching for an escape. What's wrong, Corey? I taunted. You didn't hesitate to sneak around behind my back. Let's see how you do face to face. A chant began. soft at first but growing louder. Fight. 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 Corey stood up, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. You're crazy, Santiago. I'm not fighting you, I laughed, the sound echoing through the arena. What's the matter, scared? Can't hold your own in the ring either. The crowd's chant intensified, the pressure mounting. I saw Corey's resistance crumble under the weight of thousands of eyes. Finally, he snapped. Fine. You want to fight? You've got one. The arena exploded in cheers as Corey made his way toward the ring. Stella tried to stop him, grabbing his arm, but he shook her off. I stared him down. Show me what you've got now, and then we'll see about that rematch with the multi-million-dollar contract. I turned to the announcer. Make the announcement. Still looking stunned, the announcer raised the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have an impromptu match. In the blue corner, former champion Santiago Fisher, and in the red corner, challenger Corey Robinson. I shrugged off my jacket and shirt, handing them to Patrick. Corey did the same, though his movements were stiff with anger. As we squared off in the center of the ring, I could see the fear in his eyes. He might have been younger, but I had years of experience. The referee glanced between us, clearly uneasy about the sudden turn of events. Gentlemen, are you sure about this? I nodded, my gaze fixed on Corey. Absolutely. Corey hesitated for a second, then gave a nod. The referee sighed. All right then, keep it clean. Touch gloves and come out boxing. We tapped gloves, a mock gesture of sportsmanship, then returned to our corners. I caught sight of Stella in the crowd, pale and wide-eyed. Good. This was just the start of her nightmare. The bell rang and Corey charged at me, swinging wildly. He had plenty of power but no form. I easily dodged his sloppy punches, countering with sharp jabs that landed every time. By the end of the first round, Corey was already gasping for air, a cut opening above his eye. Meanwhile, I was barely winded. As the fight progressed, I systematically broke Corey down. Each punch was payback for every lie, every act of betrayal. The crowd was going wild, but I barely heard them. My focus was solely on Corey. Then I saw my moment. Corey dropped his guard for just a split second, and I unleashed a brutal combination: left hook, right cross, left uppercut. Corey hit the mat hard, and this time he stayed down. The referee began counting, but I already knew it was over. When he reached 10, the arena erupted in cheers. I stood in the center of the ring, arms raised in victory. But this wasn't just about winning a fight, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my life. The medics rushed to tend to Corey. You still want that rematch, he managed to say. I'll destroy you next time. Today I wasn't ready, but I'll take my revenge. His words trailed off as he lost consciousness. I grabbed the microphone one last time. Thank you all for being here tonight, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. Let this be a lesson. No matter how many times you try to knock me down, I'll always get back up, and I'll come back stronger. Corey and I will have a rematch with a multi-million-dollar contract. Winner takes all. Stay tuned for more updates. With that, I left the ring, leaving behind a battered Corey and a stunned Stella. As I exited the arena, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. This was just the beginning of my comeback, and I was ready for whatever came next. The morning after the fight, I woke up with a sense of clarity and purpose that I hadn't felt in a long time. My body ached from the exertion, but my mind was sharp. I had a new goal now: to prepare for the official rematch with Corey and to take down Stella in the legal battle. I called Patrick as soon as I got out of bed. We need to start training today, I told him. Already? You just fought last night, Patrick replied, his concern evident. That was just a warm-up, I said. The real fight is ahead and I need to be ready. Patrick sighed. All right, meet me at the gym in an hour, and we'll put together a training plan. After a quick breakfast, I headed to the gym. When I walked in, I saw Patrick setting up the equipment. What's the game plan? I asked, starting to wrap my hands. Patrick turned to me. First, we need to see where you're at. That impromptu fight last night may have taken more out of you than you realize. We spent the next hour going through different exercises and drills, assessing my condition. By the end of the workout, I was drenched in sweat but felt energized. Not bad, Patrick remarked, nodding in approval. But there's still work to do if you want to be at your best for the rematch, whatever it takes, I responded. This isn't just about fighting Corey, I'm fighting for my reputation, my business, everything. Patrick's expression turned serious. Speaking of which, have you thought about the legal side of things? Stella and Corey's stunt with those photos and business info, it's bound to have some consequences. I nodded. I'm already on it. I got a meeting with my lawyer this afternoon. After a quick shower and change of clothes, I headed to my lawyer's office. Mark greeted me with a firm handshake. Santiago, good to see you. I caught your performance last night, quite the spectacle, he said, motioning for me to sit. I leaned forward in my seat. It was necessary. Now I need your help to hit them where it really hurts, Mark nodded, pulling out a file. I've already started building a case. The leaked photos are a clear violation of privacy laws, and those business secrets, that's corporate espionage territory. Good, I said. I want to come after them with everything we've got, especially Stella. She had access to all that information because she was my wife. She needs to pay for betraying that trust. Mark looked at me intently. Are you sure, Santiago? Going after her like this, it's going to get ugly. I met his gaze firmly. I'm sure. They tried to destroy me, Mark. Now it's my turn. We spent the next few hours working through the lawsuit details. By the time I left Mark's office, I felt a sense of satisfaction. The wheels of justice were in motion. As I drove home, my phone rang. It was Stella. I hesitated but answered. What do you want? I asked coldly. Santi, please, she said, her voice shaky. What you did last night was too much. You're going to destroy everything we built. I laughed bitterly. We? There is no we, Stella. You destroyed that. The moment you slept with Corey, she started to cry. I made a mistake. Can't we talk about this? There's nothing to talk about, I replied. Except maybe in court. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. I hung up before she could respond, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Her nerve still astounded me. Did she really think she could talk her way out of this? When I got home, Jean was waiting on my doorstep, her expression resolute. I heard about the lawsuit, she said as I approached. I raised an eyebrow. You're sure about that? This is going to get messy. Jean nodded firmly. I'm sure. Corey needs to pay for what he did to both of us. I unlocked the door and motioned for her to come inside. All right, let's talk strategy. As we settled into the living room, a sense of hope sparked inside me. With Jean on my side, our case against Stella and Corey would be even stronger. The road ahead would be tough, but I was ready for the battle. What I didn't know was that Stella and Corey were gearing up for their own fight, but I was done being caught off guard. Whatever they threw at me next, I'd be prepared. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of intense training and legal preparations. Every morning I was in the gym with Patrick, pushing my body to the limit. Every afternoon I was in meetings with Mark, refining our legal strategy. The media frenzy surrounding the upcoming match and the lawsuit was relentless. Wherever I went, reporters were there, microphones in hand, bombarding me with questions. One morning, as I was leaving the gym, a particularly persistent reporter cornered me. Mr. Fisher, can you comment on the allegations made by your wife? She asked, thrusting a microphone toward me. I paused, caught off guard. What allegations? Her eyes lit up, sensing a scoop. Mrs. Fisher claims you were physically abusive during your marriage. She says that's why she turned to Mr. Robinson for support for a moment. I saw red. The audacity of that woman knew no bounds. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Those allegations are completely false, I said firmly. My lawyer will be addressing them shortly. No further comment. I pushed past the reporter, my mind racing. As soon as I got to my car, I called Mark. Have you seen the news? I asked as soon as he answered. I was just about to call you, Mark replied. Don't worry, we're already drafting a statement to refute the allegations, and we'll be adding defamation to the lawsuit. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Good. I want to hit back hard on this one. She's crossed a line. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a moment, trying to process this new development. Stella was playing dirty, but I could play just as dirty. I drove to the TV studio where I knew Stella and Corey were scheduled for an interview. As I entered, I could hear their voices from the set. We're the victims here, Stella was saying, her voice trembling with fake emotion. Santiago is a controlling, abusive man. Corey was just trying to help me escape. I walked onto the set, interrupting the interview. The host's eyes widened in shock. Mr. Fisher, we weren't expecting you, she said. I gave a cold smile. I'm sure you weren't. But don't you think it's time we heard both sides of the story? Stella and Corey looked like deer caught in headlights. I took a seat across from them, never breaking eye contact. So Stella. I began, my voice dangerously calm. Why don't you tell everyone how abusive I was? Was I abusive when I was working 60-hour weeks to build our business? Or when I was planning surprise vacations for our anniversaries? Stella stammered, clearly unprepared for the confrontation. That's not," she started. I turned to Corey. "And you, Corey, you were just trying to help her escape, right? Is that why I found you in our bed? Were you planning her escape route between her legs?" The host tried to intervene. "Mr. Fisher, please, this is a family show." I raised my hand, silencing her. "No, I think it's time people heard the truth. These two aren't victims, they're liars and cheaters who got caught, and now they're trying to save face." I stood up and addressed the camera directly. "To anyone watching this who has been cheated on, who has been betrayed by someone they trusted, know this: you're not a lot alone. You don't have to let them win. Fight back, stand up for yourself, because if you don't, who will?" With that, I walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned silence. As I exited the studio, my phone buzzed with a text from Patrick. "Saw the interview. That was one hell of a counterpunch, but be careful, champ, they might hit back harder next time." I smiled. Let them try, I thought. I was just getting started. In the days that followed, public opinion began to shift. People who had initially sympathized with Stella and Corey were now questioning their narrative. My surprise TV appearance had resonated with many who had experienced similar betrayals. But Stella and Corey weren't giving up easily. They continued making appearances, spinning their tale of victimhood. It was exhausting, but I refused to let it sidetrack me from my goals. One evening, while I was reviewing some legal documents, there was a knock at my door. I opened the door to find Jean standing there, looking anxious. "Santiago, we need to talk," she said, stepping past me into the house. I shut the door and turned to face her. "What's going on?" Jean paced back and forth in the living room, wringing her hands. "I just got off the phone with Corey. He threatened me, said if I didn't drop the lawsuit, he'd make sure I lost everything in the divorce." My fists clenched at my sides. Jean's eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I'm not backing down, but I'm scared, Santiago. What if he follows through?" I walked over and placed my hands on her shoulders. "Jean, listen, we're in this together. I won't let Corey or Stella hurt you. We'll fight them, and we'll win." She took a deep breath and nodded. "You're right. I just needed to hear that." As Jean left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about standing up for what's right and refusing to let cheaters and bullies win. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number. "Mark, it's Santiago. I need you to add witness intimidation to the charges against Corey and get me a restraining order while you're at it. It's time to show them we're serious." As I hung up, I couldn't help but smirk. Stella and Corey thought they could play dirty, but they had no idea what was coming their way. The day before the fight, tension hung in the air like a thick fog. I had spent weeks training for this moment, pushing myself to the limit. Now it was almost time to put everything to the test. I was at the gym doing some light exercises with Patrick when my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Watch your back, Fisher. Things might not go as planned tomorrow." I showed the text to Patrick, whose brow furrowed in concern. "You think Corey's up to something?" he asked. "I wouldn't put it past him. He's desperate." Patrick clapped me on the shoulder. "We'll be ready for whatever he tries. I'll double-check all the equipment myself." As I left the gym, a sense of unease lingered. Corey was a snake. Would he really sink so low as to pull a dirty trick during the fight? I drove to the arena for the pre-fight weigh-in, my mind racing with possibilities. When I walked in, I saw Corey and his team across the room. Our eyes met, and he gave me a smug, confident grin. The weigh-in proceeded without issue. We both made weight easily. As we squared off for the cameras, Corey leaned in close. "Hope you're ready for tomorrow, old man," he whispered. "It's going to be a fight, you won't forget." I met his gaze, unfazed. "Looking forward to it, Corey. Hope you've been practicing your falls. You'll be hitting the mat a lot." As I turned to leave, I spotted Stella in the crowd, watching me with an unreadable expression. For a split second, I felt a pang, not regret, but the weight of what might have been. Then I remembered her lies and betrayal, and that feeling turned into cold resolve. Back at home, I tried to unwind, knowing I needed to rest before tomorrow, but my thoughts kept racing. What if Corey really was planning something? A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Patrick, his face tight with concern. "Santiago, we need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door. "What's going on?" Patrick ran a hand through his hair. "I've heard some things. Word is, Corey might be planning something dirty for the fight." My jaw tightened. "Like what? Apparently he's been seen with some shady guys, people known for fixing fights," Patrick explained. "I think he might try to tamper with your gloves or bribe the referee." I started pacing, my mind working through the possibilities. We can't let that happen. The fight's tomorrow. What can we do? Patrick nodded, already thinking ahead. I've got a plan. We'll do a thorough check of all the equipment before the match. I'll personally oversee the wrapping of your hands and the fitting of your gloves. Plus, I've got a trusted friend who'll be watching Corey's corner like a hawk. I clapped Patrick on the shoulder. Good thinking. Anything else? Yeah, Patrick said, his face serious. Be ready for anything in the ring, Santiago. Corey's desperate, and there's no telling what he might try. A smile crept across my face. Let him try. I'll be ready. As Patrick left, I felt a surge of determination. Corey thought he could cheat his way to victory. He was in for a rude awakening. I spent the rest of the evening going over my strategy, mentally preparing for every possible scenario. When I finally went to bed, my mind was calm and focused. Tomorrow would be the day of reckoning. The next morning, I arrived at the arena early. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as I headed to the locker room. On the way, I saw Stella in the hallway. Our eyes met for a brief moment before she quickly looked away. Inside the locker room, Patrick and the rest of my team were already there. We went through our pre-fight routine, double-checking everything to make sure nothing was out of place. As I warmed up, Patrick approached me. Santiago, Corey and his team just arrived. My guy says they're looking nervous. I smirked. Good, they should be. The hours ticked by slowly, but finally it was time. As I made my way to the ring, the roar of the crowd hit me like a wave. This was it. Everything I had worked for led to this moment. Corey was already in the ring when I climbed in. He tried to look confident, but I could see the fear in his eyes. The referee called us to the center. All right, gentlemen. I want a clean fight. Follow my instructions at all times. Touch gloves and come out fighting. We tapped gloves, and I felt how clammy Corey's hand was. As we turned to head back to our corners, I leaned in close. Ready to pay for your mistakes, Corey, I whispered. His face paled, but before he could reply, the bell rang. The noise of the crowd faded into the background as Corey and I circled each other, both of us waiting for the other to make a move. His eyes darted around, betraying his nerves despite his attempts to appear confident. Corey lunged at me with a wild right hook. I easily sidestepped it and countered with a sharp jab to his ribs. Is that all you've got, Corey? I taunted. No wonder Stella got bored, his face twisted with fury, and he rushed at me with a flurry of reckless punches. I blocked most of the punches, but one managed to connect with my cheek. It stung, but I'd done far worse. As we continued to exchange blows, I began to notice something odd about Corey's gloves. They felt heavier than they should. My earlier suspicions came rushing back. During a clinch, I whispered to the referee, "Check his gloves." Something's off. The ref gave a subtle nod and called for a break, inspecting Corey's gloves closely. His expression grew serious. "These gloves have been tampered with," he announced. Their loaded. The crowd erupted in boos and jeers, while Corey's face turned pale. I didn't know," he stammered. "My trainer, he must have." The referee turned to me. "Mr. Fisher, as the wronged party, you have the right to call for a disqualification. Do you want to stop the fight?" I looked at Corey, trembling in the middle of the ring, then at Stella sitting in the front row, her face a mix of shock and shame. This was my moment to end it all, to claim victory without throwing another punch. But that wasn't why I was here. That wasn't what I wanted. "No," I said firmly. "I want to continue. Get him a new pair of gloves. Let's finish this fairly." The referee looked surprised but nodded. "As you wish. We'll resume the fight after we switch Mr. Robinson's gloves." As we waited for Corey to get new regulation gloves, Patrick hurried to my corner. "Are you out of your mind?" he hissed. "This is your chance to end it now." I shook my head. "I didn't come here for an easy win, Patrick. I came to prove something, and I'm going to do it the right way." Patrick sighed, then nodded. "All right, chump, it's your call." Once Corey had his new gloves on, we resumed our positions. The referee gave us a final warning to keep the fight clean, and the bell rang. Corey came out swinging, desperation fueling his wild punches, but without his loaded gloves, his strikes lacked the power they once had. I weathered his attacks, waiting for the right moment. "What's wrong, Corey?" I taunted, blocking his punches. "Missing your secret weapon," he growled and lunged forward. "Shut up and fight, old man." I saw my opening and took it. A sharp 1-2 combination snapped Corey's head back, followed by a brutal body shot that left him gasping for breath. "That's for sleeping with my wife," I snarled. Corey staggered, his guard dropping. I seized the moment, landing punch after punch, each one powered by months of anger and betrayal. "This one's for trying to destroy my business," I growled, delivering a crushing right hook. Corey's legs wobbled, but he stayed on his feet, barely. "And this," I said, winding up for the final blow, "is for thinking you could ever beat me." My fist collided with his jaw in a perfect uppercut. Corey's eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the mat like a puppet with its strings cut. The referee began counting, but it was just a formality. Corey wasn't getting up. 10. "It's over," the ref shouted, waving his arms. The crowd erupted in cheers. I raised my arms in victory, my chest heaving from the exertion and emotion. As the medical team rushed to attend to Corey, I glanced at Stella. She was staring at me, her face a mixture of awe and regret. I held her gaze for a moment before turning away. That chapter of my life was finished. Patrick climbed into the ring, wrapping me in a bear hug. "You did it, champ." You showed them all. I nodded, still catching my breath. "Yeah, we did it, but it's not over yet." The ring announcer handed me a microphone, and I knew it was time to address the crowd, to put the final nail in the coffin of Corey and Stella's betrayal. As I raised the mic to my lips, I understood that what I was about to say would change everything. The true victory wasn't in the ring, it was in what came next. The arena fell silent as I lifted the microphone. Thousands of eyes were fixed on me, waiting for my words. I took a deep breath, scanning the crowd before locking my gaze on Corey's corner and Stella. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline still surging through me, "what you witnessed tonight wasn't just a boxing match. It was a fight for integrity, for justice, and for the truth." I paused, letting my words settle. The crowd hung on every word. "Many of you know the story behind this fight, how I was betrayed by the two people I trusted most, my wife, Stella, and my former trainer, Corey Robinson." Boos filled the arena at the mention of their names. I raised a hand, quieting them. Their affair was bad enough, but they didn't stop there. They tried to destroy my reputation, my business, everything I've worked my entire life for. I turned, pointing directly at Corey, who was still being treated by the medics, and tonight we saw just how far they were willing to go. "Loaded gloves, Corey. Really? Is that how little faith you had in your own ability?" The crowd jeered again, and Corey avoided my gaze. "But here's the thing," I continued. "Their attempts to bring me down, they failed. Not just tonight, but at every step along the way. Because when you build your life on lies and deceit, it's only a matter of time before it all comes crashing down." I glanced at Stella, sitting in the front row. She looked small, defeated. "To those of you who've been betrayed, who've had your trust broken, I want you to know something. You can come back from it, you can rise above it, and you can come out stronger on the other side." The crowd cheered, many rising to their feet. As for Corey and Stella, I said, my voice hardening, "Your actions tonight and over the past months will have consequences. Legal action will be taken not just for the loaded gloves, but for the leaked photos, the stolen business information, all of it." I saw Stella's face go pale, while Corey looked like he wished he could disappear. But more than that, I went on, "You'll have to live with what you've done. With the knowledge that, when tested, you chose dishonesty and cowardice. That's a burden you'll carry long after any legal punishments are over." I turned back to the crowd, my voice softening slightly. "To my fans, my supporters, and everyone who stood by me through this ordeal, thank you. Your belief in me, your encouragement, meant more than you'll ever know." The cheers grew louder, and I raised my hand to acknowledge their support. And finally, to the boxing community and the sports world at large, let this be a reminder. Integrity matters. Fair play matters. We owe it to ourselves, to our fans, and to the sports we love, to always strive for honesty and excellence. I lowered the microphone, signaling the end of my speech. The arena erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. As I looked around, I saw people standing, many with tears in their eyes. Patrick appeared at my side, clapping me on the back. "Damn, Santiago, you just became a legend," I grinned, feeling the weight of the past months finally lifting. "Thanks, Patrick. I couldn't have done it without you." As we made our way out of the ring, reporters crowded around us, shouting questions. I raised my hand, signaling the crowd to quiet down. "One at a time, please," I said calmly. "I've got all night." A young reporter made her way to the front. "Mr. Fisher, what's next for you after this?" she asked. I smiled. "Well, first I'm going to celebrate this victory with my team. After that, I'm planning to focus on growing my boxing promotion business. There are a lot of young fighters out there who deserve a fair chance, and I'm going to make sure they get it." Another reporter chimed in. Any message for Stella and Corey? I paused, thinking carefully before answering. I've said everything I need to say to them. It's time to move forward. As we continued answering questions, I noticed Jean approaching, her face beaming with pride and relief. Santiago, she said when she reached us, that was incredible. You really did it. I pulled her in for a quick hug. We did it, Jean. I couldn't have gotten through all of this without your support. She grinned, a glint of mischief in her eyes. So, does this mean I get a job in your new promotion company? I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. You know what? Why not? Let's talk about it over dinner. I think we've all earned a celebration tonight. As we made our way out of the arena, surrounded by cheering fans and flashing cameras, I felt an overwhelming sense of triumph. Not just because I beat Corey in the ring, but because I had overcome all the challenges that had been thrown my way. The future looked bright, full of new opportunities and challenges, but for now, I was content to enjoy the victory with the people who had stood by me through it all. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had, in the end, become the catalyst for my greatest success. Stepping into the cool night air, I knew the best was yet to come. The weeks following the fight were a whirlwind of activity. True to my word, I dove headfirst into expanding my boxing promotion business. The publicity from the fight had put me in a unique position, and I was determined to make the most of it. One morning, as I sat in my new office overlooking the city, there was a knock on the door. "Come in," I called out. Jean walked in, a stack of papers in her hand. "Morning, boss. Ready to go over today's agenda." I smiled, still getting used to our new working relationship. "Hit me with it." She sat down across from me. "All right, first up is a meeting with that young heavyweight prospect, Marcus Johnson. His manager's eager to sign with us." I nodded. "Good, what else?" The lawyers called. "They want to discuss the final settlement in the Stella and Corey case." I leaned back in my chair, thinking. What are they offering? Jean looked down at her notes. "Stella's agreeing to a no-contest divorce. She'll give up any claims to the business or your personal assets. Corey's facing a hefty fine and a suspension from boxing for the loaded gloves." I tapped my fingers on the desk, and the leaked photos and business secrets, they're both signing non-disclosure agreements. Any further leaks will result in heavy financial penalties. I nodded slowly. "All right, set up a call with the lawyers. Let's wrap this up and put it behind us." Jean jotted down a note but hesitated before speaking again. "There's one more thing. Stella, she's requesting a meeting with you. Says she wants to apologize in person." I felt a pang of something, not quite anger, not quite sadness, just a dull ache where my feelings for Stella used to be. "Tell her no," I said firmly. "Whatever she has to say, she can say it through the lawyers. That chapter of my life is closed." Jean nodded, looking relieved. "Understood. I'll let her know." As she turned to leave, I called out, "Jean." She paused at the door. "Yes, thank you for everything. I couldn't have made it through this without you." She smiled warmly. "That's what friends are for, Santiago. Now let's go make some champions." The rest of the day flew by in a blur of meetings, phone calls, and planning sessions. By the time evening came, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Just as I was packing up to leave, Patrick burst into my office, a huge grin on his face. "Santiago, have you seen the news?" I raised an eyebrow. "What news?" He grabbed the remote and turned on the office TV. A news anchor was mid-sentence ... and in a shocking development, former boxer Corey Robinson has been arrested on charges of attempted fight fixing and fraud. This follows just weeks after his highly publicized loss to Santiago Fisher. I stared at the screen, emotions swirling inside me. "Well, I'll be damned." Patrick clapped me on the shoulder. "Looks like karma finally caught up with him." "Huh," I nodded slowly. "Yeah, looks like it did." As the news continued detailing Corey's downfall, I felt a sense of closure. The last loose end had been tied. "You know what, Patrick," I said, grabbing my jacket. "Let's go grab a drink. I think this calls for a celebration." Patrick grinned. "Now you're talking." As we left the office, I took one last look at the TV screen. Corey's mugshot stared back at me, his eyes hollow and defeated, a far cry from the smug, confident man who had once betrayed me. Patrick and I headed to a nearby bar and settled into a quiet booth in the corner. As the bartender brought our drinks, Patrick raised his glass. "To justice," he said with a grin. I clinked my glass against his. "And to new beginnings." We drank in comfortable silence for a moment before Patrick spoke up. "So what's next for the great Santiago Fisher?" I leaned back, considering his question. "You know, for the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the future. We've got some promising fighters lined up. The business is booming. I trailed off as I saw a familiar face at the bar. It was Jean, looking around nervously. Jean, I called, waving her over. Join us. She smiled, relief crossing her face as she slid into the booth next to me. Sorry to interrupt your evening, she said. I just heard about Corey and I didn't want to be alone. I put a comforting hand on her shoulder. You're not interrupting anything. Your family now, remember? Patrick nodded. The more, the merrier. What do you have, Jean? As Jean ordered her drink, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. A year ago I thought I had everything: a loving wife, a successful career, loyal friends. Then it had all come crashing down. But now, sitting here with Patrick and Jean, I realized that I hadn't lost everything. I had gained something new, something stronger. You know, I said, raising my glass once more. I think it's time for a toast. Patrick and Jean looked at me, waiting. To second chances, I declared, to rising from the ashes, and to the family we choose. To family, they echoed, tapping their glasses against mine. As we relaxed into the conversation, laughing and sharing stories, a deep sense of peace came over me. The betrayal, the fight, the legal struggles, they were all behind me now. The future ahead was full of potential, a future where I was stronger, wiser, and surrounded by people I could truly trust. The bar's TV still displayed the news of Corey's arrest, and I noticed Jean watching it, her face a mix of emotions. Hey, I said softly, bringing her focus back to the table. You okay? She nodded, a small smile spreading across her face. Yeah, I really am. For the first time in a long time, I understood exactly how she felt. We had both gone through hell, but we had come out the other side stronger. As the night went on, we discussed plans for the future: new fighters to sign, business expansion ideas, and even a charity event to help victims of domestic abuse. The energy at the table was electric, filled with hope and endless possibilities. By the time we left the bar, the city lights sparkled around us like stars. I took a deep breath of the crisp night air, feeling more alive than ever. You know, I said to Patrick and Jean as we got ready to head our separate ways, I think this is the start of something great. Patrick grinned. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, champ. Jean nodded in agreement. Here's to many more victories, both in and out of the ring. As I watched them leave, a wave of gratitude washed over me. The journey that brought me here had been tough, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It had revealed who I truly was, what I was capable of, and who I could really trust. I turned and started walking home, my steps light and purposeful. The future was bright, and I was ready for whatever it had in store. The betrayal that once seemed like it would break me had become the foundation for my greatest triumph. As I reached my front door, I paused, glancing up at the night sky. A shooting star streaked across the darkness, and I smiled. It felt like a sign of fresh beginnings and endless possibilities. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, ready to face whatever tomorrow had in store. The story of Santiago Fisher, the man who rose from betrayal to become a true champion, was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. This is where our story ends. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel, click the video on the screen, and I'll see you there.